Hey, welcome to the Nexxt podcast. Today I have a special guest, Dr. Delaney.
Good.
Right.
Since about 2016, I've been solely working on the NFL concussion lawsuit.
Okay.
Solely. So I would say I work on probably about 200 plus players and manage cases for multiple law firms. I don't work at a law firm. They hire me to manage their cases.
When you say they hire you, what is the title?
I offer legal consulting and case management for law firms. So they can either ask me questions that they've got about the case that they need help with their docket. And we usually call it the NFL docket because there's only NFL players in it. And so either they'll ask for advice with questions for the case, or they'll actually hire me to manage their entire docket. So
Not only do you work,
I'm considered a case specialist for this case.
Okay. All right. And not only do you work with NFL players, you also work with NBA players as well, correct?
So I work with NBA players on a personal level. I offer personal management where I'll help a player with speaking engagements, writing their book, helping them set up a business, a nonprofit, just financial advice, business advice, consulting and management on that level. So I help with that as well. So I have about, I'd say 5 personal players that I work with outside of the NFL concussion case, just personally help them manage. I strictly work with professional athletes only.
Okay, cool. And you're currently in college to become a lawyer?
I am at the University of Houston right now. I am on the academic path to become a lawyer. So I figure I've been working in law since 2015. I might as well become a lawyer myself and open my own firm. So.
You might as well. Right. You might as well become one. We met some years ago in reference to the NFL concussion test as well.
We did.
And we had a conversation just about the concussion test and the protocols and what it entitled. And I know we went through the BAPS tests and stuff as well. And I have a lot of friends, obviously played in the league and played college, that's going through it now. And that's going to be going through it for a while. Explain to the viewers how, if you have a player that's looking to enter the protocol, how does it work?
One, the window to enter the case is closed since 2007. Had to have already been in and registered by that time. Majority of the players that are qualified have been registered from my knowledge. I think there's just a handful that cognitively don't really have issues and just felt like they didn't really need to register. If there's a situation that you came in where you really didn't know how to register, you do have cognitive issues, you have clear documentation that you have cognitive issues, then I would definitely reach out to somebody like myself or a law firm that's handling the NFL concussion case so they can help you register. If you truly have a reason why you didn't know how or did not register in time, there is a small window of them still helping you get on, but it just can't be like, oh, I didn't pay attention, or it has to be something severe, like a coma for the past 6 years. Something serious.
And I think back then, especially 10, 15, 20 years ago, concussions was different, right?
It was.
You was playing a game today as a player, we called it stingers or getting your bell rung. Right. So I think a lot of times players didn't realize that was a form of a concussion, but it was more about, okay, can I get back on the field and play?
One of the interesting things is, how we're so protective of females. We have a daughter and we're like, oh my gosh, did she fall down? Oh my goodness. But the same little son at say 2 years old will fall down and be like, oh, he'll get back up. Give him a minute. He's got to toughen up. And it's a horrible thing because the brain doesn't differentiate between male and female. The brain is just sitting there inside of the skull and just truly not needing to be shook up as much as it. And it is a sad situation because it's like people are like, concussions have changed. Concussions haven't changed. That blow
Right.
to the head is the same severe blow to the head that needs to take a very long time to recover from. It is
Right.
not take a,
Right.
can you see how many fingers I got up? How many fingers? Okay, all right, you're good. Go back
Right.
in the game. It's horrible. And we've got, especially, I'm in Texas right now. So, Texas is the football state, at least one of them. And we've got
One of them. Right.
4-year-olds playing touch football here. And there is no way
4 years.
you're going to recover. If you tell me that you have a concussion, documentation have shown, hence this entire concussion case, that 10 years from getting your first concussion can create a situation where you're going to have side effects of memory issues. Do you want to tell me why you're now surprised your 14-year-old that you put in touch football since 4 is having issues at school with memory?
Right. And I
He's
think
hit his 10 years.
right. Correct. Even with players, and I think you can touch base on it in the intro. I'm 45 years old. So a lot of guys in my age bracket probably won't even start to see symptoms until they're later in their life, right?
Correct.
So you got that situation.
The major symptoms that come in, yes, are about 10 to 15 years from when you first played football. And unfortunately, as we understand, as you play through the years, the game gets harder. And when I say fortunately, It just means that you're fine-tuned, you're a better player, you're a better teammate, you learn more skills, you learn how to train better. And as you hit the NFL, you are now a fine-tuned machine, okay, that truly knows and understands how to play the game. But you're also getting hit harder. You're getting damaged longer. The ramifications of a hit is much more severe because you have a stand full of people that are staring at you. I'm looking at the picture behind your head. That's a stadium full of people that are expecting their teammate, their person that they're cheering for, to win. And the only way you're going to do that is if you take your body and put it through another person to try to make sure that they drop that ball, or you pick up that ball, or you take it to the end. However the process of that play works, you're utilizing your body. And
I like to call it small. I like to call it collisions.
Oh, okay.
Small car, collisions, 20 miles an hour. Every play you got collisions. And the brain wasn't designed for that.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. It's interesting because we will get in, as you say, collisions. We'll get in a car accident. You'll bump us from behind and we'll be like, oh my gosh, my neck. And then we'll all, you need to call a lawyer and I got to figure out what to do. And then some people laugh about it. And some people literally will be like, okay, whoa, my spine is hurting me. My head is hurting me from one little car accident. They were like, ding. They weren't even like a full on accident. Just like and just imagine that can give you so much issues. How much issues are actually being ignored? So make sure you don't lose your chance to play. Make sure you don't get kicked off the team. Make sure you don't complain too much so they have to send you to the doctor and then all of a sudden you're cut. And so much stuff is ignored. So much stuff.
And I think like even just the day-to-day life, because a lot of times with my wife, when she's talking about, oh, she hurt, I'm like, that don't hurt. Come on. It's cool. It wasn't that hard. And I think about it now that you say it, like probably should have went to the doctor to have someone look at it, but didn't. So I think as athletes and playing a sport, a very dangerous sport, very competitive contact sport, guys are, I watched the game with her and she was like, why did, he didn't hit him that hard. I said, oh, that wasn't hard. She'd be like, what do you mean? His head whiplash and hit the back of hit the ground. So it wasn't that hard. She said, to you, it wasn't hard, but to the average person, it's hard.
You're used to playing back in the day when you just had to play. You've got players right now that will sign the draft table, which was the dream for everybody that I know that has played in the NFL. Okay. That draft table and being able to sign that wherever your number came up. Okay. You hit that lottery. You've got these young kids that are signing it and then getting injured on the field and realizing nobody really cares. And they're leaving, they're walking away. Can you imagine walking away after a month of you getting in and your first injury? It's because they're realizing right now that they're not taking care. They don't care. They care about the game. They care about the money. They don't care about the people. And that's
and I think
that's one of the really scary situations with this thing. What my main concern is, we see the concussions, we see the hits, we see the blows. We watch reels and takes because they have thousands of takes and stats of everybody who's been through everything. But what we're not
Right.
seeing are the symptoms that are invisible. We'll
Right.
see some players that look like, man, you can go out and play tomorrow. You still set, you still ready. And they don't understand the issues that they've got going on inside. I had a player that he was training, because obviously when you come off from playing the NFL, you got to figure what you're going to do with your life after that. And
Right.
majority of the
Right.
players played 2 to 4 years. You don't, in that 5 years is, that
That's the
true lottery
threshold.
ticket for the NFL. And
Right.
so you get out and you got to figure what you do. And I had a player who was training, doing personal training. He had one of his camps, football conditioning camps. And you got all the people on the stands watching their kids. They paid all this money for these camps. These kids are like 7, 8 years old. And I was sitting on the stands listening to a lady beside me. She's like, oh my gosh, look at the coach. He loves what he's doing. He is crying. Oh my gosh, he's enjoying training my baby. So when the game was over, the training camp was over, I walked over to him and I'm like, hey, what's going on with you? He's just kind of like, man, every time I blew that whistle, my head was burning. But I couldn't tell anybody because I got to do this. I got everybody watching me. So while they're sitting here thinking that he's cherishing the moment to train their babies, his head's on fire. But he doesn't look like it. He looked like he can go back out and play football tomorrow. And it's an invisible illness, which I think is what kind of makes me so compassionate to it. I get up, I move, I run around. I'm in school. I raise 6 kids. I run a business. I do a lot, okay? But I have MS and lupus, and I don't look like I do. At least not right now, thank God, knock on wood. And I've got down days more than up days, but you don't see them. And what I call it is that invisible illness. I have a handicap placard because of my blood results of my pain level. And I'll park in front of the grocery store and get out, and people will look at me like, oh my goodness, why is she parking there? And they don't understand that I need to get milk, and you don't grasp the amount of pain that I'm going through from my car to the milk to the register back to my car. And they don't see that because it's an invisible illness. And there are over 20,000 plus players that are walking around with this invisible illness, the headaches, all the symptoms that I've got to deal with day to day to process. That's what scares me. And this case, unfortunately, is just slowly taking care of it. And I can't emphasize those 2 words is anymore. They have moved the goalpost for this case so many times. I literally feel like it's a sport for them. It's like another sport.
When you say they moved the goalpost,
when this case started,
how did they move the goalpost?
And every player got that postcard in the mail. Your only qualification was be a football player, be a former football player, and have had concussion. And every single player sat and looked at that postcard and they'd be like, I had at least 10 concussions in practice before season started alone, so I'm good. Right? Every single player. And they all filled in, they called up, and they were like, cool, let me respond. Then the case opened. You got to be a football player. You've had to have a concussion. You got to prove you had a concussion. Whoa. They called it like ringing my bell. Or I had one coach that just called it, you're getting heat stroke. Just go sit down and drink some water. It was called so many different things. How am I supposed to prove this now? What if they didn't document it? You know what? Some of the teams did document it. Some of the players went home during off season and said, hey, I got some headaches and I hit my head really bad. Did you see that on TV? And so they did document it. Okay, all of a sudden now they're going to move the goalposts again. So now you got to be a player. You got to have had concussions. You got to document it. You got to show documentation. Oh, and you got to be seeing a current doctor about your condition. They keep moving the goalposts. And so this was a compensation case where just if you're in a car accident, like a collision, okay, and you go for a compensation case, you get in the car accident, you got to prove you're in the car accident, prove you were the driver, prove you got insurance. They got to show they got insurance, right? prove that you've got some injuries, and you get paid. Well, now all of a sudden, where it's supposed to follow that compensation track now, they move the goalposts again. Prove you're a player, prove you had concussions, prove that you're seeing a doctor. Oh, and now you also got to prove that your symptoms are keeping you from being able to work. Whoa, this is not a disability case. So why do I need to prove I can't work? Why can't the fact that I'm figuring out how to work with my symptoms that I've proven now, why can't I get compensated? You knew that I was going to get injured. You didn't tell me that when I signed my draft paperwork. And that's what my biggest complaint with this case is. That's why, not being a lawyer, I'm still constantly filling in court paperwork, defending players outside of the realm of this supposed click and submit portal that they put up. It's not a click and submit. It's constant battling them. Constant. It's crazy. So that's why I say keep moving the goalpost.
So what do you say to people that say guys knew what they signed up for?
They didn't know what they signed up for. You didn't know what you signed up for. You knew what you signed up for when you were signing up for college based on what you knew from high school. You had no idea how hard college was going to be. You had no idea that was going to be 10 times harder than football in high school. That was as hard as you can think it was going to be. Then you went to college and you played hard. And all they told you, especially if you were a good player, you got to get into the NFL. And that's all you heard. Got to get into the NFL. And when you got called on that
and
draft
that's what
table,
you wanted.
All you knew was as hard as it was in college. There was no way for you to know how hard it was going to be. And the only way for you to know the specific symptoms and ramifications that professional football was going to offer you would be by all these studies and documentation that the NFL had sitting there from the 70s, that they knew how bad it was going to be. So when the draft paper came, and this was the adult part of your life, this was your moment to take your choice to say, I'm going to figure out what either complete this college degree or use this college degree, depending on what path you took, okay? And make your decision at that draft table with documentation, knowing that you are going to have post-concussion syndrome. Here's the problem. They gave nobody that option. When you sat down to sign your draft paper, did your draft paper include you're going to get, not these are the ramifications, you play football, you know what's going to happen. Everybody hears that, okay? Here's medical studies that we've been doing that 100% says you're going to get post-concussion syndrome if you play this game at a professional level, 100%. And you only need to play for about a year.
And that was left out. No one ever talked about that.
And that's why this case exists, because they didn't let people know.
Even up probably after a year, maybe 2 years after the protocol, the concussion lawsuit came out, they used to have that show back in the day on HBO, I think it was, the top hits, where they were still promoting violence and the hits. And for about a year or two, until someone said something and people started making a big fuss about it, till they decided to cancel the show.
Right.
So the whole time they was monetizing off of it. So I agree. It's kind of like you look at somebody like Junior said that was doing things out of character. His wife said, and a few times when he ran his car off, crashed his car, and she felt like he was trying to take his life then. So I think there's a lot of cases like that going on that we just don't hear about and don't know about.
There's a lot of phone calls that I've gotten late at night from either wives or the players themselves, being like, I'm done with this case. I'm tired. Just, can you give me a will? Do I need to have the will before I kill myself tonight or tomorrow? And I'm up the whole night now talking them through to try to save another person. It's not easy. The symptoms are not easy. And these are not by people that you would look at and be like, oh, he looks sick. No, these are people that look like they can go play the game. People that smile at you at the grocery store. People that you say, hey, how are you doing? Hey, man, how you doing? I'm doing good, man. You remember that game? Yeah. And you have no idea when they go home what's going on.
The pain.
Yeah.
And you're talking about men, barbaric men that's taught to keep keep their feelings to themselves and handle it
Right.
themselves. Reaching out to someone and talking to someone is hard, and it's almost not manly to an athlete. So they rather bottle it in and keep it to themselves.
It is very difficult. But what's positive is I've been winning cases. So there is a silver lining. They are paying.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you that after they lost the racial discrimination norming, that it's gotten easier.
I saw that.
It's not gotten easier. Okay. They were racially discriminating against players. And it's interesting because I like to call it demographic discrimination. And it's not because I want to downplay that it was against Black people. The majority of players in the NFL were obviously Black players.
Or Black. Correct.
But I have a player that is a white player that came from the trailer park area when he was young. You see this in his documentation through his medical records. He was discriminated against. Mm-hmm. So it was really a demographic type situation. However, that's obviously in the 1% to 2% of players.
Correct.
So we're looking at the bulk. And when you look at the bulk, you got to look at the masses. And the masses obviously were Black players. Racial discrimination was wrong. I have been fighting it since it started. I saw it when it started. I have been fighting it nonstop. Fortunately, they're not allowed to do it anymore. Unfortunately, it's like they disturbed a hornet's nest because the NFL lawyers have gotten more ruthless than I have seen in this case. I've been doing this case since 2016, and it has been this year that the results, the determinations, the responses from the NFL lawyers have brought me to tears. And I have been solid this entire time. It has just been ruthless because I always tell people who are like, oh, who's your favorite team? All you work is for the NFL. And I said, my favorite team are my players. For my players. That's my favorite.
Right. I agree.
My team has over 200 players, and I love each one of them, and they are my favorite. I don't have any. I haven't been able to bring myself to watch football at all. It's hard. It's really hard. But the cases are winning. They're hard, but they're winning. And the reason I think that they're getting harder is because I say we as a collective, because I have been a voice collectively helping to try to stop some of the issues and disparity that's been going on in this case. And we collectively are leveling the playing field. And it's making them angry. I don't care. And I'm going to fight it till I die. This case is 65 years long. I'm 51 years old. I don't know how much longer I get, but I will fight it till as long as I'm walking on this earth or in a wheelchair, whatever it is.
Right. Definitely. So when you say police and they won't be able to do it again, who is watching them? Does one hand watch the other? Is the NFL Players Association involved?
I do not think so. I would have to say that I do not think so. Players Association does what they can for the players locally in each one of their chapters. They don't have any part of this case. I wish they did.
Is the judge looking over it, or
the judge?
Right.
I don't feel the judge Brody and claims administration is really putting the players where they need to be put against the NFL as hard as we need them. They're working. They are pushing cases through. It's not easy. Okay. And the NFL lawyers are making our life very difficult. I have seen claims do everything that they can to try to push a case through. I've seen them also just fold. And so I can't take their side. And claims is supposed to be the law firm, which is Brown Greer, that is supposed to be there for the players. When this case was won, Judge Brody made the final decision. Brown Greer was put in place to represent the players and be there. Right. have this portal available. So all the different law firms that when we gather players, we go through the portal, we push it through claims, and then claims does their job and then shows the NFL like, so you reproved it, and then they get paid. And it's not happening like that.
They get paid.
So
Right.
the NFL's strong holding doctors and making them change diagnoses, and it's horrible. But we're winning. I've got players that I drive them nuts. I always say that I will fight you as hard as I will fight for you, but I fight to win. You'll get a call from me and be like, are you seeing doctors? Oh, I haven't seen my doctor right now. Just send me through to evaluator. You're not ready. And they just get angry and they want to change attorneys. They want to see somebody else. And then I've literally had a player that was very angry. He's like, you know what? I just want to see an evaluator now. You know what? You're not doing your job because you just keep telling me to see a doctor and that's not working for me. And he went somewhere else and he lost. And you know what? He came back. And it's because I never said anything wrong. It's just that I'm not saying what they want to hear. And that's one thing that I will never do. I will never be a yes. I think
when you want what's best for the players.
Correct. You guys have had handlers since since coaches saw stars in you since high school. You've had handlers since then. I know players that were in their senior year, didn't have good shoes, and a coach would buy them a shoe because they were a great player and they're making sure that you've had handlers since that star was seen. And you went to college and there was handlers, and you went to the NFL and they're handlers, and then the NFL was done with you, and then that was it. And you now had to figure out, how do I do all this myself? And you weren't actually trying to do this. School doesn't prep you for adult life at all, period. That's why I homeschool all my children. School does not prep you. It does not prepare you. It doesn't even prepare you how to change a tire or do your taxes. Basic, simple necessities that everybody needs to know. It doesn't prepare you for stuff like that. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's important. It prepares you to push for their agenda, to be the worker bee in this country. And if you're not the worker bee, you're an athlete.
I agree.
And that's unfortunately what it is, and nobody's really set up for what comes out of this. Because if you don't, like you talked earlier, if you don't make it to that 4 to 5 year string in the NFL, you're chewed up and spit out. What do you do now?
Right. So I think eventually, in order for the whole process to work, I think they need to appoint someone to oversee.
They do have something called the special masters. So when things get escalated to a certain point where it's surpassed Brody's decision making, who is the leading judge on this case, it goes to special masters, and special masters will make decisions on specific lien arguments, different fights that are happening within the case. That's how we ended up winning the racial discrimination, because it's been going on. We've been complaining for years. I made one of my first complaints in early 2018, that I voiced my complaint and tried to escalate my argument. And I called back to see how the escalation went, and I was just getting ignored. And then it got into the news in 2018, and then it got brushed underneath some political stuff that went on top of it, and it was just nobody paid attention to it again. And it wasn't until it came back out again. It was just like, okay, this is getting serious. Somebody's got to pay attention to this. And it went higher than Brody. So there are people that are overseen, but it's just like the Supreme Court. It takes a lot to reach that level. It takes a serious level to reach up to the Supreme Court. So everybody keeps hitting up at Brody, and Brody is doing whatever Claims wants, and Claims is getting strong-armed by the NFL, and we're just in this loop. So it's just a matter of who's stronger at that one arm wrestle for that one player. That's why I try to make sure that the cases are solid before it goes up there, because they're going to poke as many holes as they can through it.
To send it back down. Do they have a particular protocol? Because I know a couple of weeks ago, watching, and probably for about a good 3 weeks, you had similar situations to where guys was getting concussion and they was allowed to go back in the game. So is there a particular protocol that they're following right now?
So I haven't watched the game in the last year at all. Not one game this last season. The year before, I watched a couple, and I saw somebody get hit, and I saw them take him out. And for me, I think that he should have been pulled off. They made sure
Right.
that he was okay for about 2 more plays, and then he was back on because he was one of the starters. And so that really disappointed
Right.
me. And I realized that, yeah, there's a protocol. So before they would have done the quick finger test and put him right back out the second it was time for him to be out. So
Right.
they held him for 2 more plays, 2 or 3 more plays. He shouldn't have went back in for the game. He got hit hard. But then if you put me and a bunch of other, as they call helicopter moms, in charge of the game, there would be no more football game, because as soon as you
Right.
get injured and
Right.
you get hurt, oh my goodness, no, Billy is hurt. Let's get him off the field. That's it. We're done playing. That'd be the end of the game. They'd have to have 400 players per team
Correct.
just to try to let a game go through if you took everybody off right away. So I don't think they're following the protocol the way they're supposed to, because just for the fact of nobody's going to hold 400 to 500 players on a. When they start cutting, then it's all about money. This game is all about money. If everybody's getting paid
Right.
fairly,
Agree. Totally.
then they can have a bunch of players. So if there was injuries, you could just switch them out. But it's not like that. It's not like that. And if you're going to give a player $2 to $12 to $15 million, you want to make sure he starts every game he's supposed to start, and he plays every game he's supposed to play, because we're paid you
Correct.
for that. So it's about money.
Right. And then also back on the racial side of it, the $1 billion settlement that was, I guess, settled in 2021. Who is anyone overseeing that as well, or is it the same judge
and the same special master?
Okay.
That is overseeing the new revision to the case. So they're not allowed.
So
they're not allowed to do the
whole
racial norming anymore. The heat norms. What's interesting is a lot of the doctors that were agreeing to do the norms and place these racial norms on these players. A lot of them have dropped out of the program. So I'm finding it harder to find doctors to send players to. There's not a lot of them. I remember in 2018, I had a doctor tell me, he's like, hey, I got a player walk in and I see he's black. Boop, check the box. And it was just kind of, what?
Wow.
He's like, there's discrimination. And he didn't say discrimination. He said there's norms that I have to apply when they're black. And that's what got me aware of what was going on. And I started paying attention when I saw the reports come in and I saw that little line. I used the demographic heat norm. I was like, whoa, why? And that's when I started to learn the difference. Right. I'm happy that it's over. I'm thrilled and elated that it's not happening anymore, because it wasn't fair. There's no reason that somebody should walk in and just because they're black, 3 points are added, 3 to 5 points are added to their scores, because they figure you would have already had from birth. That's just from being black. Right. So that's a horrible thing that was happening. However,
especially to a league that's probably 70%
more
black.
Than that. Right. What's sad is that there is not, as you continually ask me, there's not enough checks and balances to make sure that what's happening now is fair. They can't use the heat norm anymore, but are they still being fair? You just programmed thousands of doctors, of neuropsychologists and neurologists to racially discriminate against their clients walking in the door. So you can't do the score based on the T-score level that you were ranging it on in your system. But is it still a discrimination level walking in when they walk in the door? When you talk to them, because a lot of the results, like the clinical dementia rating, that's a suggestive result. You ask the spouse or family member, what does he do? Does he do his own laundry? Does he do it? Their answers, the doctor gets to suggestively decide where you sit in this little bracket. I've had a player that got a 2.0 on his scores. Okay, that the ratings are 1.0, 1.5, 2.0, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and death with CT. And I had a player that scored a 2.0, and they called a friend of his that he had do a third-party sworn statement, and the doctor called the friend, and the friend was like, "So have you seen him?" And he couldn't answer much of the questions other than he had seen him. He came to a wedding and he looked really good. I was really proud to see him up and out. And the doctor took that one story, even though this guy doesn't live with him day to day, and dropped his CDR to a 0, and he lost the case. From a friend that hadn't seen him in 5 years, visually, okay? Him saying he looked great. Now, we know this is an invisible illness. If you're going to go to a wedding, you pull yourself together, you go in that bathroom, you close the door, you tell the person in that mirror, we got to pull this together. We got to swallow all our pain. We got to swallow all this stuff. We got to deal with this. And we're going to try to make it through this wedding because my wife needs me to be here, or my daughter needs me to be here, or I got to walk my daughter down the aisle, or whatever the reason is. And you pull everything together to get to this wedding. And then you have one friend who hasn't seen you in 5 years, okay? But you don't really talk to anybody, so you had to use him as a third-party sworn statement because he's your best friend. And he says to the doctor, I was so proud of him, he looked great. And now you just lost your case. That's the goalpost that I'm
Instead of going to the family and asking the family
that's the goalpost and the checks and balances that I say that is not fair. Because
you would think they would talk to the family.
He didn't have a family member. He had one best friend. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that the doctor is able to suggest, and no heat norms was used, no racial discrimination was used, but the doctor was able to suggestively just say, like the friend said, he looked good in the wedding, that he hadn't seen him visually for 5 years. His only best friend. That should have told you something right there. But the doctor took the one story of the wedding and said, he's good. And dropped his score from a 2.0 that he scored in the system down to a 0. So that's where the checks and balances that I don't think are fair for this case. So how do we fight stuff like that? You've got people like me who say, hey, I want a second opinion. I'm sending a player back to another neurologist, and I want the doctor to call this person here. And I want to make sure that this person understands that this CDR has to be done, because I'll call them out on their stuff. Like I will call them, no, this is not correct. We're going back to the drawing board because you're not pushing this case out. Sorry. So I may annoy the NFL and I annoy claims, but I don't care. I'm not there for them.
You doing your job. How does a neurologist specialist, how do they go about getting registered to be the players, or can they go anywhere?
They cannot go anywhere. You have to contact the players, the NFL, the doctors, neurologists, neuropsych, and their team will have to contact claims administration and figure out how their registration is going to be so they can sign up. Now, I've never worked directly with a doctor, so I don't know what their system is like on that end. I know that they have a portal that they need to upload their medical documents to, which looks a little different than our portal. Everything still runs through Brown Greer, then through Brody, and then when it reaches that point, it goes over to the NFL. So
it's safe to say the doctor's working for the NFL.
So it's safer to say the doctors have gone through the program and the rules and regulations that claims, who's supposed to be on the side of this side of the case, has set forth.
Right.
Those rules and regulations that were set forth, however, were done on a drawing board that included the NFL lawyers. And that's where the problem has been. So we've leveled that drawing board.
Need to be separate.
And taken off a very large piece of it. So some doctors that aren't able to handle the change have left. I'm hoping that more doctors will sign on and just be ready to be honest, real doctors in what they do in their everyday life, bring that to this case, because we need neurologists, we need neuropsychologists for this case, and we need them all over. because players are all over.
Right. All over.
From what I understand, it's not hard to sign up if your if your license is good and you have everything that you require. It's not hard to sign up. They just give you a lot of rules that you've got to make sure that you follow. They've got rules they got to follow for their job, for other things as well.
So they're already following that stuff anyway, probably. You spoke a little bit briefly about being on the college likeness lawsuit years ago. How was that going, and is that closed?
It's been closed for a good couple of years. They were paying players for their faces that were used in the games, the EA games. Yeah, they were making money off of you guys, especially the starters, and then they were making a lot of money off of them. So,
NIL.
So,
how do you feel about? Have you paid any attention to the NIL deal and how it's working?
I have been strictly focusing at this point on the concussion case. I have followed the NCAA concussion case that creeps up and down every so often, just to see where it's going to sit. I follow the Rydell case when it creeps up and down every so often to see where that's going to go, because obviously, per the requirement to join the NFL from the 80s, you had to go to college. So every one of my players are going to qualify for that case once it officially opens.
Right.
It'll take a while.
What is the Rydell? I don't think I heard much about the Rydell.
So the Rydell was a helmet case. When the case came off for the NFL tried to throw some blame at Rydell. It was their helmets they sold to us. When the NCAA came off, they tried to throw some shade on Rydell. So Rydell's been fighting. So they're all still in court. Nothing is finalized, not even close to finalizing right now. They're trying to throw it off onto everybody else. It's going to be harder for college to throw it off, especially when you've got college doesn't just cover, the NCAA doesn't just cover football. You've got rugby players that did not use Rydell helmets. And female rugby players weren't even allowed to use helmets. So, same sport. You've got a lot of contact sports in college that you can't throw all of it over at Rydell. So it is, it's concussion. It's not primarily of were the helmets bad, and that's what Rydell's trying to fight. It was when they got a concussion, how did you deal with it? The helmet
and I think that's the big thing.
A car seatbelt can only do so much. I can have my seatbelt on. I can be in my Jeep. It's got roll bars. It's got airbags. Everything's great. And I can still get in an accident and die. It doesn't mean that all of those safety measures were bad, were faulty. It just means that the accident was more than those can bear. That's all that is. And when you get a player that gets injured and they're injured and then they're injured and they're injured and they're injured and they're injured, there's only so much that you can bear. You know, what people don't know, if you get in a bike accident, you're on a motorcycle or a bicycle or a car accident with a baby car seat, all of that foam that's sitting inside there, same in the helmet, okay? All of that foam, like a football helmet, all that foam that's sitting there. Do you know that if you get a bike accident one time, you're supposed to throw the helmet away and get a new helmet? How many times has your kid fallen with a bike helmet and you'd be like, all right, back up, you're good, let's try this again. They get a hard enough fall, you're supposed to throw it away. Yes, if you get in a car accident with a child, okay, technically, according to the car seat rules, if you get in a car accident, even if the car seat worked, you all lived, okay, the pressure that car seat went through for that accident, despite working, okay, and your child is fine, you're supposed to throw that car seat away and get a new one. Same with the motorcycle helmet. I was in a motorcycle accident. And my helmet got a little scratch on the side. Didn't crack or anything like that, but I threw it away. And yes, it had a Bluetooth and everything in there, and it burned me because it was expensive. But I knew better because I wasn't in an accident. My head hit the ground. And inside there, you're not seeing that foam, and it may not be exactly the way it needs to be for if I get in another accident. So I need to bite the bullet and get a new one. And so these are the kind of things that we're not fully paying attention.
So if that's the case, NFL players should have a new
Correct.
helmet after every game.
And I'm not saying after every fall, but
Right.
definitely after every game.
Every game. Because I didn't know if you get an impact with a helmet, you're supposed to throw it away.
If you like, I know if there's a bicycle for a child, because they put an extra amount of foam on that. There's a certain level, but if you crack
Right.
the plastic on the top of that bike helmet, even though the
Mhm.
foam looks like it's good, you're supposed to throw it away because you created there's an
You're supposed to
integrity
throw it
issue
away.
that is now it's broken. Throw it away. So yeah, you fall off a little bit and you ding yourself, you can be okay. But I've had sons that have rollerbladed and
Right.
skateboarded
I'm
and
sure.
trashed those helmets, and they'd be like, "Duct tape, we're good."
I'm sure.
You know, and and you're
I'm
not
sure.
supposed to. You're supposed to throw them away. So it's just interesting, but are they going to do that? That's expensive. Are they going to throw away helmets at the end of
Right.
every game? No. You put your sticker on it. It's your helmet.
No.
You know what I mean? Look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has a history of
Right.
putting specific stickers all over their helmets, and you can't do that if you're throwing
All
it
over
away
their
at the end of every
helmets,
game.
Right. Thanks. Appreciate the time. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting the fight for the guys. I love it. Anything I can do, let me know.
Same with me. If there's anything that I can do, let me know. Ohana Management Group.
Okay.
I'm doing the best that I can for these players.
Okay, definitely. And if I have some guys that's looking, I'll send them your
Even if
way.
they just have questions and they don't want to change
Definitely.
lawyers,
And
I'd rather answer questions and help them steer them right with their lawyer than for them to just be in the dark. I don't believe in the darkness.
okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Until next time, you can leave it up. Running for about 5 minutes and then cut it off. You can close it though, but just close it. I'm gonna edit this part out, but you can leave it up running for about 5 minutes because then they have to finish uploading to the software.
Okay.
But you can stop it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Later.
Bye.
All right. All right.
And where do I stop it? Boop. Leave. There we go.